All right, everybody, we are back this week for UFC Fight Night. Taira versus Park. Originally set to be Taira versus Albazi, but after Albazi pulled out, we have a new main event now with the up-and-coming undefeated HYUNSUNG Park getting his first ever UFC main event against a man who is coming off of a loss, but was thought to be the future champion and is still considered to be a potential future champion at 125 pounds in the grappling and submission ace, TATSURO Taira. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, let's not waste any time. We're going to kick it off in the flyweight division between Felipe Bunes taking on Estevam. I think this is a good fight, and I think the odds are way off in this one. Stylistically, I think Estevam probably has the better wrestling. I think he has better takedowns, better control, and he probably has a better gas tank for the first 10 minutes. I think both of these guys would probably be gassed if we get to the third round of this fight. I think both guys would probably be in a lot of scrambles and a lot of submission attempts, using a lot of submission escapes, a lot of passes, and I think on the feet, Bunes is more competent in the striking than people are going to give him credit for. You know, I know he was getting pieced up by Joshua Van, but early on, he kind of cracked him a few times. He landed some kicks to the body, a good one too, landed some good takedowns. Like, I think he can compete on the feet with Estevam. You know, Estevam undefeated, 13-0. It makes sense why he would be the favorite because I think he's obviously shown more promise in his UFC career. But, you know, he beat Charles Johnson, which is a good win, a better win than Felipe Bunes has. But Bunes, I mean, arguably rocked and hurt early the guy who's going to be fighting for the flyweight championship next in Joshua Van. So I know he lost. I know he slowed down, and I know he got TKO'd in that second round. And he didn't really have a lot of gas left, but, you know, Estevam isn't going to put that pace and pressure on him like a Joshua Van. He's not going to have the combinations on the feet like a Joshua Van. And I think Bunes probably has more power. I think he has more snap on his punches, more snap on his kicks. I would say Estevam is probably the better wrestler, but I think in terms of threats with the submission attempts, I almost feel like Bunes could maybe get taken down and controlled, and then Estevam just leaves his arm out there and gets it snatched up, or leaves his neck out there in a transition and gets caught in a guillotine. Like, I just think that even if he's the better wrestler, the jiu-jitsu and the activity of the submission attempts, the dexterity of the hips of Bunes, I think he's live here to lock something up. I mean, he could literally be getting dominated, and then boom, he just grabs a submission, just switches his hips and gets an armbar, maybe catches Estevam in a triangle. Yeah, and I think in the third round, like I said, everybody's going to say, oh, well, Bunes isn't going to make it to the third round. Well, in the third round against Jesus Aguilar, who I think Bunes would probably beat, in my opinion, he was getting pieced up and getting just beat up bad, getting his takedowns stuffed, getting pieced up on the feet, just kind of backing up, having no real defense. And the same thing happened against Charles Johnson, where he was winning the first two rounds easily with takedowns and wrestling control, and then just getting destroyed in that third round and almost getting TKO'd. I mean, just a dominant third round for Charles Johnson. And I think Bunes has the ability to throw up those submissions, and it makes him more dangerous, even if Estevam is the guy who has the better takedowns. So, first fight up, I'm taking a shot on the plus 300, plus 350 underdog in Felipe Bunes. I have no choice, guys. Like, I get it. He hasn't had the best career. He's shown some deficiencies. He's gotten pieced up on the feet. But I think a lot of this fight takes place in the grappling. And if they're grappling, I'm not going to put it past Felipe to throw those hips over and get an armbar, or throw his hips and get some type of a submission, or potentially catch him on a takedown attempt when he's tired, and Bunes might be able to grab his neck in a guillotine. But give me Felipe Bunes. I'm going to take Bunes round 2 armbar submission as the plus 350, plus 370 underdog to kick off the card. Yeah, I think he's live, and there's going to be a lot of grappling that gives him a chance to win. So give me Bunes. Bunes, second round submission via armbar. All right, next up is a battle in the middleweight division between Klein, who's coming off that fight where he almost knocked out Mansour Abdul Malik with a spinning back elbow, taking on a Contender Series, I guess, alum. He was a huge underdog coming into the UFC. He already lost one fight. He went to a decision with Christian Leroy Duncan, and that is Andre Pulyaev. Yeah, so in this fight, I think, Klein is going to be the better grappler, but I feel like Pulyaev is going to have good enough takedown defense to be able to stop a lot of the takedown entries and submission attempts if he does get him to the ground of Nick Klein. Like, I just feel like his frame, it's going to make it kind of hard for Klein to get on the inside and get those takedowns. I also think that on the feet, Klein can land some crazy techniques. Like, he could land a weird head kick, he could land a spinning back elbow or a spinning back fist, but from a stylistic perspective, I think Pulyaev is the much better striker. I think he's going to be able to land long, rangy strikes, a jab, a 1-2 down the middle. That cross is going to be there. He's going to switch stance mid-combination. I think he's going to be able to chop some low kicks, but he might not throw as many low kicks just because it can open up the takedowns for the guy who has the better and more superior jiu-jitsu in Nick Klein. Klein might only need one takedown to be able to scramble to his back and get a sub. But, he faced Liam Anderson, who technically is known as a pretty solid grappler and submission artist, and he wasn't really able to do much of anything once he did get him to the ground. Like, towards the end of the fight, okay, I think he did get a takedown at the end of the fight because he was tired. But in this fight, I think the takedown defense and jiu-jitsu, and not so much the jiu-jitsu, but the takedown defense, the range control, and the footwork of Pulyaev is going to make it a lot harder for Klein to get into the areas that he wants to get into in order to get those takedowns and look to work his game. So on the feet, I think it's kind of a Hail Mary strike that he lands, maybe a weird head kick or an awkward spinning elbow, a spinning back fist, something like that. But for the most part, I just kind of think Pulaev's going to pick him apart, use good footwork to kind of stuff out the takedown attempts and make Klein hesitant to shoot the takedowns. And on the outside, he's longer, he's rangier, he throws more combinations, and he's got the cleaner striking. And I think he'll probably just start catching Nick Klein on the way in and just piecing him up. I think it's going to be more of an attritional finish to where he probably, starts to rock him. Maybe the first round is close. I think Pulyaev might get taken down, but he'll work his way back up. He'll use the fence. He'll, get those underhooks, shrimp him, or suck his hips out, push him off the fence, and then once it gets to the second and the third round, I think he's just going to start picking him apart. The jab, the 1-2, Klein's going to be running into punches. I think Pulyaev probably starts to work the body, and I think he'll just break him down, take his cardio away, and finish him off late in the second round. So I'm going to take Andre Pulyaev. Give me Andre Pulyaev, round 2 TKO. I think he survives the early onslaught, survives the submission attempts, tires him out, and beats him up. So Pulyaev, round 2 TKO is going to be the pick. All right, next fight up is in the middleweight division. You have a battle between Rodolfo, the black belt hunter, Vieira, taking on Mr. Vicious Tresean Gore. 6-3 for Gore, 10-3 for Rodolfo Vieira. This is basically typical striker versus grappler. If Vieira is able to get on the inside and get the takedowns, I think he probably would control Tresean Gore, wear him down, wear him out, and then eventually submit him. But this is another scenario where, every fight starts on the feet. And Vieira's striking has gotten better. I think he's gotten a better 1-2. He's become more comfortable on the feet with the striking. But even though Gore doesn't have the best record, I don't think you want to stay on the feet at all with Tresean Gore if you're Rodolfo Vieira. Even in that fight with Marco Tulio, he cracked Marco Tulio and hurt him a couple times. That fight early was just a barroom brawl, just a technical slugfest. And they went to war, and Tulio came out on the winning end. But if you're able to stand and trade with a guy like Marco Tulio, I think you will absolutely demolish Rodolfo Vieira on the feet. But again, he doesn't have that much experience in pro MMA. But, find me another guy with a record of 6-3 who has this much experience at a high level, so to speak. I mean, even fighting the likes of Brian Battle and, hurting him multiple times on The Ultimate Fighter and winning that fight. Then they come back and they fight in the UFC, and I believe Battle ended up beating him by decision. But in this fight, I don't really think Vieira is going to have much of anything to offer Tresean Gore on the feet. And Tresean Gore has an 83% takedown defense, I believe. 83% takedown defense, where Rodolfo Vieira has a 26% takedown accuracy rate. Now, if you look at strikes absorbed per minute, Vieira takes 4.4 and lands 3.3, but Gore takes 8.6 and only lands 2.7. But I fully believe that those stats are skewed because of the war he had with Marco Tulio Silva. I think that really started to skew the stats and skew, his overall ability. And a lot of his fights are very quick. They end early, whether he's getting a finish or he's getting finished. I think Vieira has gotten better at, like I said, becoming more comfortable on the feet, using his jab, using his 1-2, moving away. But I think once he starts to taste the power of Tresean Gore, he's going to be diving at legs, diving for takedowns, diving to the body lock. And I think Gore has good enough hips and a lot of strength in his takedown defense and the ability to hike those arms up, get under the armpits, dig the underhooks, circle off the fence, and just start to beat up Adolfo Vieira. Vieira's gotten better at absorbing strikes and not kind of cowering away like he did earlier. But I think the power of Tresean Gore is really what makes the difference here. I mean, if Gore hits him like 2 or 3 times really solid, he could stun Adolfo Vieira with one shot. Like, he could literally stun him immediately. And don't think that this guy is inept at getting submitted. Don't think he's invincible, because he got submitted by Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Now, Hernandez has a totally different style, but with the way that Vieira shoots the takedowns, I would not be surprised if Gore hurt him with a shot. He stumbled into a takedown attempt and got submitted with a guillotine. I mean, Tresean Gore has one of the best guillotines in MMA. High elbow guillotine variations. I mean, literally can lift people off of the ground by their neck and choke them unconscious. Just look at what he did to Josh Fremd. And Fremd was having some success on the feet. I believe Fremd to be a much better striker than Adolfo Vieira. Like I said, Vieira is getting better, but with the lack of success with the takedown attempts and the takedown defense and the striking ability, the technique, and the power of Tresean Gore, I think this is a Tresean Gore pick all day. Especially with an 83% takedown defense. So give me Tresean Gore. Give me Mr. Vicious. I'm going to take Tresean Gore to win by a second round knockout. I could see it even in the first round. He might hurt him in the first round and put him down. But I'm going to say Vieira pushes him against the fence, tries to cage wrestle, goes for a takedown. Gore stuffs it, starts using the jab, starts using the 1-2. I think he starts to tire out Vieira towards the end of the first round. And then I think in round 2, Gore's going to land a big 1-2. He's going to hurt Adolfo Vieira, and I think he's going to TKO him. So give me Mr. Vicious. Give me Tresean Gore to win round 2 TKO. This guy's record is deceiving. He's got good technical skill, good power, good takedown defense. I like him here, especially against a guy who doesn't really like to push the pace or like to really get into those firefights. And Gore will get into those firefights. So Tresean Gore, round 2 TKO over Adolfo Vieira here as the underdog. All right, next up, you got a battle in the bantamweight division between Rinya Nakamura taking on Nathan Fletcher. I picked Fletcher against Colin Loughran. I've said from day one, I'm never going to be a fan of Loughran. I think I've picked him to beat Taylor Lapilus, but, I don't like to pick Colin Loughran too much in a lot of fights. I picked against him in the fight before Nathan Fletcher, I believe. Who was that against? Let me look that up. It was a guy off the Contender Series. I think Angel Pacheco. Yeah, I picked Pacheco to kind of slow him down and break him later on in the fight. Pacheco wasn't able to get much of anything done, and it was pretty much a dominant performance from Loughran. But I picked Nathan Fletcher. I thought he arguably did enough to beat Colin Loughran with the damage he caused at the end of the third round when Loughran kind of just controlled him with the wrestling and didn't do too much damage. But in this fight originally, before I watched tape, I was going to take Nathan Fletcher because I thought he had good grappling, he had decent takedowns of his own, he has good control, he has solid striking on the feet, and I will say I think he's the better striker than Rinya Nakamura. I think he has better technical skill, I think he mixes it up better on the feet, and Nakamura lost his last fight as a huge favorite against Muin Gafurov. I think Gafurov was like a 5-1 underdog, and a lot of people are going to sour on him and completely just dismiss his skills, and don't get me wrong, I think Nathan Fletcher can make this fight competitive. I think there could be some good scrambles on the ground. I think there can be good submission attempts on either side. I think even on the feet, like the striking is going to be competitive. But I think Rinya Nakamura is going to use what he didn't use in the last fight, which caused him to lose as a big favorite, and that's his wrestling. His takedowns, his jiu-jitsu, his chain wrestling. I think he could potentially get caught in a submission, but I think the chain grappling, the control, the submission attempts, I think eventually that's just going to wear on Nathan Fletcher. I think it's going to start slowing him down. I think that this fight is actually going to go the full 15-minute distance. And I'm just going to say that Rinya Nakamura controls Nathan Fletcher for at least 2 out of the 3 rounds. I think Fletcher probably has a decent submission attempt. I think on the feet, Fletcher's going to be the better striker. I think he's going to mix it up better with his kicks, knees, punches, elbows, and he's going to be better on the feet. So I think he'll have some success. I think he'll go for a couple submission attempts. But at the end of the day, I think Nakamura is just going to be able to out-wrestle. He's just going to be able to out-wrestle Nathan Fletcher. Is going to be able to win more scrambles than he loses, and is going to be able to suck the wind out of Nathan Fletcher. Okay, I think he's going to chain wrestle, outwork him, move, from position to position, and just slowly start to wilt Nathan Fletcher over that 15 minutes. So I'm going to take Rinya Nakamura to win. I'm going to take him 29-28 unanimous decision. I think he banks 2 out of the 3 rounds. I think this does go the distance, so maybe that's a little bit of a pick that people aren't expecting, but I'm going to say Nakamura wins 2 out of the 3 rounds with his chain wrestling and top control. So Rinya Nakamura 29-28 unanimous decision. All right, up next is one of my favorite fights on the entire card in the featherweight division. You have a battle between Danny El Puma Silva taking on Kevin Vallejos. I think that this fight's going to be a war. I don't see Danny Silva getting stopped early. I don't see Vallejos just getting on the inside, ripping up Danny Silva, hurting him to the head and the body and finishing him. I think this fight's going to go the full 15, and I would venture to say that it really just depends on who can keep their pace up over 15 minutes. We saw that Gene Silva, which now, at that point, we didn't really know. Now we know Gene Silva is probably going to be the next champion at 145. I believe he might be the next champ at 145. And Vallejos just kind of got slowed down. He got outworked and just out-controlled, and the power was a little bit too much for him against Gene Silva. But he comes back on the contender against Cam Teague, and he starts ripping those body shots, slipping the jab, coming over the top right hand, left hook to the body, left hook up top, right uppercut, left hook to the body, left hook to the head, and he just really put on a boxing clinic and stopped Cam Teague with body shots. Danny Silva comes into the UFC as an underdog against Joshua Culibao. Hurts him, drops him in the first round, almost locks up an arm-in guillotine. Culibao starts to come back, working back with the pace and the pressure, starts to put it on Danny Silva, and they go back and forth. But in this fight, man, I think Danny Silva is very comfortable in the pocket, and so is Kevin Vallejos. So I think both of these guys are going to come forward. I think both of these guys are going to have counter for counter. Both these guys are going to work the body, work the head, use their jabs, move on the inside and the outside, and I think this is going to be a war. I know Vallejos is like minus 500. That makes no sense to me. This fight is a whole hell of a lot closer than the odds are telling you. And I went back and I watched the Lucas Almeida and Danny Silva fight. I'm very surprised that was a split decision. I thought Danny Silva clearly won that. I think Lucas Almeida looked good at certain points, but I thought for sure Danny Silva did enough to win. But Silva's good at shoulder rolling, coming back with the right hand, landing the 1-2, switching stances, southpaw, landing the cross. He's very good at covering and countering, and I think Vallejos is better with kind of evasive movement in terms of head movement, slipping, rolling, and countering. So I think we're going to see a lot of counter for counter, a lot of you hit me, I counter back, I counter your counter, you counter my counter, and it's just going to be a back-and-forth kickboxing match. If anybody uses their wrestling, I think it probably would be Danny Silva. I think if the more takedowns are going to be attempted by Danny Silva, and I just think this fight's going to be close, man. Like the cardio dynamic in the third round, Vallejos looked good against Cam Teague, but he finished him early. He looked good against Seungwoo Choi, but he finished him early, and that's also a guy who stylistically can get finished and knocked out a lot. I know he knocked out Julian Rosa, but Rosa is also a very chinny fighter in himself, so I think Kevin Vallejos wins, okay? I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you, I think Vallejos wins. I think he's the cleaner boxer, and I think he'll land the cleaner counters, and I think he'll work the body better. But don't get me wrong, like that forward pressure and the volume striking of Danny Silva, the way he puts his punches together, if he can slow down Kevin Vallejos in the second round, I think he can win that third round at a high clip just by pushing forward and outworking Kevin Vallejos, who might have a little bit of issues with the adversity. But I'm going to say Vallejos is competitive for all 3 rounds. I'm going to say Vallejos banks the first 2 rounds, loses round 3, and a lot of people think like, oh, it was a robbery decision, but I do think this fight goes the distance, and I'm just going to say that the cleaner counter striker, the fighter who's going to land the cleaner shots is going to be Kevin Vallejos, and I think he just outboxes Danny Silva. It's close, it's competitive. Silva lands his own shots. Silva probably has more volume. Vallejos probably the more impactful shots and the harder, cleaner, more powerful punches, I think goes to Vallejos. So I'm going to say Vallejos wins the fight by 29-28 unanimous decision. I think he wins the first 2 rounds, loses the 3rd round, and just wins the fight on the scorecards. But it's a good, competitive, pretty much purely stand-up fight unless we see Silva resort to some takedowns, which wouldn't surprise me. So give me Vallejos to be the cleaner striker and land the cleaner shots, the better counters over 15 minutes. 29-28 unanimous decision for Kevin Vallejos. All right, up next we move to a battle in the welterweight division between Neil Magny taking on Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this fight. Magny's a veteran. Magny can win if he's able to push a pace, keep Zaleski on the back foot, outwork him with volume and wrestling and pressure, and potentially get a submission just by making the guy who's more muscular and bigger tired. I just don't think that's going to happen, though. You know, I think so. Dos Santos is going to come back, get back in the win column. I think he's going to just be the fighter who lands the more powerful shots. I think he's going to hurt Neil Magny, and I think he's going to put him away. Like, I don't know what else you want me to say. If it goes to a decision, I think Magny probably wins on the scorecards. I just don't think Magny's going to survive against a fighter with the power and the knockout power of Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. I think he's going to hurt Magny early. I think he's going to close the distance, rip the body, rip those big punches over the top, big hooks, big uppercuts, throw some head kicks. I think he's going to hurt him with a right hand, jump on him, and finish him off up against the fence. So give me Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos to finish Neil Magny in round 1. Like I said, if it gets to the 3rd round, Magny probably is clinching him, tying him up, pushing him against the fence, landing knees, elbows, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, I think Dos Santos is just going to be too much, too explosive, too powerful, and I think he's going to catch Neil Magny early, drop him, get on top of him, and beat him up. Give me Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos to win round 1 TKO over Neil Magny. Like I said, I don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this fight. I think most people are expecting what I'm saying here. So let's move on. The pick is EZDS, Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos to win round 1 TKO against Neil Magny. All right, up next, we've got a battle in the women's bantamweight division between Carol Rosa taking on Nora Cornolle. I like this fight, actually, you know, and a lot of people, they're going to skip over the women's fights, and they're not going to be looking that forward to them. In this case, I think it's different, you know. I like Cornolle because she's very aggressive. Forward pressure, heavy kicks to the body, heavy punches, solid technique in her boxing and in the kicks to the body and the legs, and she will go for a finish. She went to a split decision with Jacqueline Cavalcante, and Jacqueline is very good. She's one of the best strikers in the division. We just haven't seen her compete against that upper echelon of the women's bantamweight division, but in terms of pure striking, you know, traditional martial arts striking on the outside, hopping in and out, 1-2s, good straight punches, solid kicks to the body and kicks to the head, really good range management. Cornolle was able to kind of make that fight a lot closer than people probably would have expected. I think people would have probably thought that the kicking game and the technicality of Cavalcante would be able to beat up the brute forward pressure and aggression brawler style of Cornolle. But in this fight, man, I like Carol Rosa. You know, I like her ability to strike on the feet. I think she has a good high guard. She moves well. She went back and forth with Irene Aldana. I mean, just if you want to see how tough Carol Rosa is, go back and watch that fight with Irene. I mean, they were going back and forth. She was getting, you know, chopping low kicks, throwing combinations. Irene eventually was getting the better of it the longer that the fight went, but man, it was back and forth and a very close fight for at least the first 2 rounds, and it was primarily a kickboxing match. I expect this, again, to primarily be a kickboxing match, but if anybody uses their wrestling and takedowns to kind of secure rounds, I think it would probably be Nora Cornolle. I just feel like if it's a close fight on the feet, she's going to be the one that makes the adjustment to shoot and push Karol Rosa up against the fence. She's going to be the one to shoot and get takedowns to try to control Rosa from the top. And we've seen that Rosa does have some issues off of her back, and it's a little bit hard for her to get up when she does get taken down. So I think Cornolle is going to win this fight. I could say a finish, I think she could jump on a submission and maybe get Rosa, but I'm going to say that it goes to a decision like most women's fights do. But I would not be surprised if this fight ended with a finish late in the second or the third round. Like if Cornolle was on top of Rosa and Rosa tried to explode up and got caught in an armbar or got caught in a rear naked choke as she gave up her back. It wouldn't shock me if they both exchanged on the feet and maybe Rosa hit Cornolle with a body shot and dropped her. It wouldn't surprise me either. But yeah, I'm going to take Nora Cornolle. I think she's just more aggressive. I think she's going to have the bigger moments in this fight where even if it's close on volume and it looks like Rosa is winning, the bigger moments could skew the judges towards Nora Cornolle. So I'm going to take Cornolle. I'm going to take the underdog. Give me Nora Cornolle to win 29-28 unanimous decision over Karol Rosa, but it easily could be a split. All right, next up, we've got a battle in the lightweight division. This fight is a banger. It's Elves Brenner taking on Estevam Ribovics. Yeah, I think that this fight's going to be a war. I think both guys are going to stand and trade in the pocket. I think both guys are going to land big power shots. I think both guys are going to bite down on their mouthpiece and throw heavy shots at each other until somebody falls. If anybody's going to use their wrestling, I would say it's probably going to be Brenner, because if you go back and you watch Estevam Ribovics' debut in the UFC against, I believe it was Loik Rajabov, he got taken down, and he got controlled for a good majority of that fight. Now, since then, we haven't really seen him give up a lot of takedowns. We haven't really seen him get controlled on the mat. We haven't seen him get caught in a ton of submissions, We haven't seen him get caught in a bunch of submission attempts even. But I think if Brenner is going to come into this fight with a smart game plan, he's going to try to draw Estevam into a brawl, and then he's going to look to change levels and hopefully get that takedown. Like change levels as they're exchanging, try to slip on a big cross, take him down, control him, and then look to set up a submission and ground and pound on the floor. And even if he can't get a finish, he's going to just look to win on control time. But I also know that Brenner enjoys the brawls. Brenner enjoys getting into the pocket. Brenner enjoys exchanging those punches and kicks, elbows and knees from inside the clinch. The one thing that I think makes the biggest difference in this matchup stylistically is the fact that I believe Estevam Ribovics has much better head movement than a guy like Elves Brenner. I would say power-wise, the power in the hands would go to Brenner. I think he has more powerful boxing, where I think Ribovics has better kicks, and he can kick off the exits as like the opponent circling away. I mean, we saw him set up that combination against Terrence McKinney where he was able to throw that lead hand, the rear hand, and follow up with the kick, and then put the opponent away. I mean, knocked him out cold. That is Terrence McKinney, though. I don't think he's the highest level fighter, but I think when it comes to level of competition, aside from Nasrat Haqparast, Daniel Zellhuber, Brenner's fought Guram Kutataladze. He's fought Joel Alvarez. They both fought pretty good competition. I would give the lean, however, in competition level to Elves Brenner. I just feel like he's fought the better competition overall. And with Estevam Ribovics, I feel that the difference is really going to be the volume and the defensive responsibility. Like, they both get hit, don't get me wrong. Brenner gets cracked, Estevam gets cracked. But I feel like Brenner just enjoys getting into those brawls, and he'll put his chin on the line. And that's something I don't think you can do against the fighter who has as many weapons as a Ribovics. He can throw big punches. He can throw big kicks. He throws good boxing combinations. He throws multi-punch combinations. He finishes his combinations with kicks. He can throw elbows inside the clinch. Like, I just feel like eventually Brenner's style of that forward pressure, nose to the grindstone, is going to get him caught by a big shot. It's going to hurt him, and I don't think he's going to be able to recover, strictly because I don't think that Ribovics is going to allow him to recover, because of the fact that he can put out 10, 15 punches if he has you hurt, and I don't think Brenner's going to be able to survive that. And that's really what it comes down to. So the pick overall is going to be Estevam Ribovics. I think he's just too slick, too quick for Brenner, and I think the defensive responsibility paired with the defensive irresponsibility of Brenner is going to get him hurt in this fight. So give me Estevam Ribovics. I'm going to take him by a second round knockout in this fight. I think he's going to hit him with a big right hand, hurt him, and then just pour on a combination, ripping to the body and up top, up against the cage, and finishing him off in round 2. Estevam Ribovics, round 2 TKO is going to be my pick here. All right, and now we're at the co-main event of the evening in the lightweight division. You have a battle between Mateusz Rebecki taking on Chris the Problem Duncan. Guys, this is another one that's very interesting to me, and I understand why a lot of people are going to pick the favorite in Rebecki. He's forward pressure. He's very good with his boxing. He uses that shoulder roll kind of Philly shell defense, always finds the way to land that straight left hand down the middle against an orthodox fighter. He's got the good check right hook. He loves to set up that outside angle to throw that straight left down the middle like he used to knock down a Miktabek Oralbai. And he was able to win that fight via a split decision against Oralbai. And he destroyed Oralbai's face. He dropped him. Oralbai came back. He started beating him up, almost finished him. Then he got dropped in the 3rd round, came back, took down Rebecki, beat him up, and almost finished him in the 3rd round. That was an amazing fight. That was a fight where I had Oralbai. I needed him to win, but going back and rewatching the fight, I understand why Rebecki got the decision. Just the damage he caused, and then, he got cut himself, he got hurt himself, and he does slow down later in fights. We saw it against Diego Ferreira. We saw it in the fight against Miktabek Oralbai. This guy is a machine. He comes forward, throws big inside low kicks, big outside low kicks, heavy straight left hands, a good 1-2 down the middle, a good straight left down the middle. That's probably his best punch. And he's just a mean fighter. He can go for takedowns. He can shoot takedowns of his own. He has a solid grappling game. We saw him get a submission against Roosevelt Roberts, but that was a fight where it was pretty much just a gimme fight for Rebecki. And in this fight, man, I know people are going to say that since Duncan got finished in round 1 by Manuel Torres, Duncan has been hurt before. I mean, he got hurt by Balaji before he jumped the guillotine. He was getting cracked up a little bit by Jordan Vucenic before he got that guillotine. But the one thing I will say, I'm very high on Vucenic. If you've listened to this podcast, if you've listened to me break down his fights, I think that guy's very good. And maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe my analysis is not correct and he's not UFC level, but we'll find out if he ever gets another shot in the promotion, considering he went back to Cage Warriors now. But Duncan looked probably career best. I mean, before he got the guillotine, Vucenic was kind of piecing him up. He was landing some good shots. But, I mean, right away, he landed a feint kick to a cross, dropped Vucenic, took him down, controlled him from the top position, really didn't allow any sort of offense from Vucenic for that entire first round. Control, takedown, wrestling, good pressure, good top control. And then in round 2, he was getting pieced up a little bit, but he jumped the guillotine and submitted him. Same thing against Balaji, getting pieced up, getting rocked, getting pushed back, shot a takedown, boom, caught in a guillotine, choked unconscious. He had more success in the Vucenic fight, obviously. But, I mean, he beat guys like Omar Morales. He was able to win with his wrestling and his pressure. He beat Yanal Ashmouz. I couldn't remember his name. Yanal Ashmouz beat him by decision. A lot of times this guy's coming into these fights as a big underdog. I mean, with Vucenic, he was a 3-1 underdog. With Oki, I believe he was a 2.5-1 underdog. Like, he's coming into these fights as a big underdog, and he's finding a way to win. If he's getting pieced up, if he's getting rocked, if he's getting dropped, he'll find a way to win. I think Mateusz is a hard fight for him because I think it's hard to take him down. He's got a lot of power on the feet. But the saving grace of Duncan is to make it into the second half of the second round. Now, it's going to be hard to make it through 8 minutes of this fight, because of the forward pressure, because of the power, because of the overall finishing ability of Rebecki. It is hard to make it that far. But, Nick Fiore came into the UFC and made it the full distance with Rebecki on short notice. So, it can be done. But Duncan is a guy who does get hurt. He will get rocked. We've seen him get hurt in multiple fights. We've seen him get finished before. We've seen him get finished early. But I just feel like Duncan in this fight can find a way to win again. I picked against him in his last 2 fights. In this one, I'm going to take him. And maybe this is the one where he gets steamrolled and ran over. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if Rebecki was able to run through Duncan and just get him out of there in the first round. But I feel like Duncan is smart enough to know what he needs to do in order to win this fight. He's going to have to walk through some damage. He's going to have to walk through some adversity. But if he's able to extend this fight past 8 minutes, things could get very interesting because I know Rebecki is going to get tired. Now we saw even in the oral by fight, he does carry his power late. I mean, he dropped him late in the fight in the 3rd round. So he does carry his power, but I feel like Duncan can just make this uncomfortable. I feel like Duncan can use that reach advantage. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage against Rebecki. He can use his jab. He can use his check hook. He can use his kicks. He can use his 1-2. And maybe he can just kind of slide out of the way and pick him apart. Now, there's going to be multiple times where he crashes in and gets hit with some big shots. But something's telling me that this guy can survive. Something's telling me that Duncan can just find a way to win. Like, this guy has a very good fight IQ, and he knows what he needs to do to win. It doesn't have to be the most exciting, but he knows what he needs to do to win. And he's got power. I mean, even early on in the Manuel Torres fight, he rocked Torres before he got hurt and then submitted. He rocked him with, like, the first shot he landed. So we know that he has power to compete in the power with Rebecki. I'm going to say that he survives early, gets dropped, gets hurt, gets grounded and pounded, gets bloodied, but survives. Rebecki starts to tire out. I think Duncan starts to pour on the pressure a little bit in the beginning of that 3rd round. He starts to knee him to the body. He starts to hurt him a little bit with elbows and knees in the clinch. And I think he forces Rebecki to take a bad shot. And I think he gets him in the guillotine and subs him. I could see a TKO. I could see a decision where maybe one of the first 2 rounds is close, but then Rebecki's tired in round 3 and he just gasses out and Duncan wins big, maybe with a 10-8. But I'm going to take Duncan to win. I'm going to take Duncan by a 3rd round guillotine choke submission. I could see a TKO. All I'm going to say is I think Duncan finishes this fight in the 3rd round. Now, he could get steamrolled 100%. Let me disclaimer, like, he could come out, get rocked, get hurt, and get finished by Rebecki. But Rebecki's not that big of a finisher, at least in the UFC, if you go back and watch his career. So give me Chris Duncan to implement a good game plan, survive early scares, and then tire out Rebecki and finish him late. Chris, the problem, Duncan, round 3, guillotine choke submission is going to be my pick here. All right, now we're at the main event of the evening in the flyweight division, originally set to be Amir Albazi versus TATSURO Taira. Now we've got HYUNSUNG Park taking on TATSURO Taira. Peace of Mind versus Taira. And in this fight, man, I just think Taira's too much for HYUNSUNG Park. But what I will say, Park has good grappling, good wrestling. He's got good boxing. I'd venture to say if somebody gets hurt on the feet, I think it's Taira. I think Taira could get hurt with a body shot. That left hook to the body he landed against Carlos Hernandez was absolutely beautiful. And I believe he landed a similar shot against Shannon Ross as well. But, I mean, when it comes to competition level, they do have a common opponent. Taira knocked out Hernandez, and HYUNSUNG Park dropped him and then submitted him. So they both finished him early, so I guess on that level they're somewhat comparable. I think Park's a good fighter. I do. I think he has good wrestling in his own right. He's got good scrambles. He can find your back. He can take your back, and he can get a submission. I mean, he's got good enough grappling. I don't think he's going to be able to handle the scrambles with TATSURO Taira for longer than 2 rounds. I really don't. I think he can. I think this fight will be competitive for about 10 minutes. If it gets past 10 minutes and neither fighter has been finished, I think Taira takes over. Because even when he got hurt, even when he got dropped, even when he got rocked, he still had enough gas left in the tank to wrestle, to out-scramble, to take down Brandon Royval. And yes, he lost that fight 3-2, but he got hurt early and then came back and was able to continue pushing the pace even with the wrestling, which is, primarily the most difficult part of fighting, especially on your gas tank and the cardiovascular side. The wrestling, the grappling, the scrambles, the transitions, the reversals. And I think Park can be competitive early. I give him about 10 minutes, 11 minutes where he can be competitive. When we get into that 3rd round, I think he's going to start to slow down. He's going to start to gas out with the wrestling and the transitions and the takedowns and the entries of TATSURO Taira. I think Taira is going to be competitive on the feet as well, but I think he's going to take a primary wrestling approach to this style of fight. And you also have to think Park was getting ready for a fight with Steve Ercik, which is a big fight. That's still a good fight, but it's a completely different matchup from TATSURO Taira, and he's coming in here on short notice. Some fighters can win fights on short notice. It's not like it's never happened before. I just don't think that the short notice angle is going to work in the favor of Park when he's facing a fighter with as high level of grappling, wrestling, and scrambles as a TATSURO Taira. So I think Park will look good early. Could he get a finish early? Yes, I'll tell you this right now. He could land a big shot. He could out-scramble, maybe wind up in a choke and submit Taira, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think Taira will survive the first 10 minutes, 11 minutes. He's going to start to win those scrambles a lot easier. Park's going to start to give up position a lot easier, and I think he's going to take his back, grab the neck, and get a rear naked choke in the third round. So give me TATSURO Taira to win. Third round rear naked choke submission. I could see ground and pound as well, but I think that the wrestling and scrambles is just going to get to Park the longer we go in this fight, especially on short notice. And I think in round 3, the gas tank starts to deplete. Taira takes his back and gets that rear naked choke and gets the submission finish. So give me TATSURO Taira, round 3 rear naked choke submission for the UFC Vegas 108 main event. All right, that's it for my UFC Fight Night Taira versus Park preview, predictions, and breakdown. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and smash the notification bell with your favorite striking combinations so you can stay up to date on all future uploads from the Touch 'Em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out. Have a good night, everybody.